we have concluded list of things worth mentioning that we have spotted on Ouroboros video and also on Yoi's video, and we're gonna go through these things. We can start at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. We are going to have these crossbows that allow you to literally just pull out onto the enemies. You also have reverse grip curved swords that, well, important part about them is that they are paired. Similarly to, for an example, the Starfists and so on, you're going to end up saving onto your weight because these things gonna be lighter. You're gonna be able to block cancel with them, and they also seem to have a funny stuff. Like, for example, over here we could have spotted that there is an Ash of War. Over here we can see, boom, he dashes to the side. I actually don't know if this dash has iframes or not, but if it does, then, well, it's gonna be interesting, that's for sure. Another thing that we can see on Oro's video is one of the light greatswords. The light greatswords is essentially a new weapon class, and it's quite interesting because all these things that you see here, these are actually not a one-string combos. So here you have a guy just blocking the attack, then what you see next is a guard counter, but these two swings, this is one attack, and the third hit is actually a follow-up. It's looking very seamlessly, but it's important for us that it is actually separated input to do that third swing, because it essentially means you are not going to overextend on the guard counters, which essentially, as a perspective of PvP pair in my case, it means that guard counters can be quite viable in PvP from now on, at least with that weapon class. On top of that, light greatswords actually looking like type of weapon that would be viable with the sword and board. Another thing that we see in Oro's video is that throwable axe, which is basically just a throwable weapon. Honestly, probably not very good in PvP, might be good in PvE, but another thing is that crazy thing, the crazy jumps with essentially a claw type of weapon, new claw type of weapons. And I actually am very curious about forward momentum of that thing, because it's looking kind of spammable, not gonna lie, but also it's probably going to deal very little poise damage. So we are going to see how viable it actually is. Another weapon class is very scary, dude, because yeah, we have perfume bottles as actual weapons, and dudes. Whereas regular attacks, as you can see here, it's it's probably deal not that much of the poise damage. The range is rather low, but what is scary is what we see next, because this weapon class might be actually very good with the running attacks and the charge attacks. So let me actually get a little bit further here and look at this. Yep, this is 4 times the size of the Flaming Strike, and it's probably going to be absolutely phenomenal for the wake-ups, because, yeah, it's quite freaking insane. If you are going to land the backstab and then use that one, and your connection to your opponent is actually decent, you probably have guaranteed roll catch. It's pretty fucking good. On top of that, look at this running attack. It kind of looks like the hitbox goes from the side, so you have to free aim and go to the side, but it also looks like easy 8 frames running attack, which is kind of insane. By nature of this moveset, you can also assume that this shit is unparryable, so you cannot really even cheese stuff with the parries, yeah? It's gonna be probably quite cancerous type of weapon class in PvP. And in PvE, it's probably not gonna be that good, because I assume that the stance damage is not gonna be great. But yeah, it's looking very scary for us PvP pairs, not gonna lie. Going further, it seems like we got a little bit of the power creep for the spells. So you have these gravity spells, and right now, this one is actually, it's essentially gonna allow you to zone quite easily your opponents, and it's kind of like the Ash of War of the Radan swords, but now you're gonna be able to scatter them around, which might be pretty good from Invader's perspective if you're gonna plant them around the walls and so on. What you have seen here is also the fist weapon, but we're gonna get to it a little bit later. This moveset looking fantastic, by the way. I really, really like what I see here. Look at that. That jump into like multiple hit spin. It's actually Ash of War, apparently. Another thing is actually certain Ash. Look at that. It's the Crucible Wings Ash that actually I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. But all I have to say, it's gonna be another type of Ash that's gonna be pretty much freaking useless. But in the invasions, you gotta have to respect it. Just because if you want, then you're just gonna get blended. But for us, for people that are doing PvP, this Ash is going to be very, very, very bad. Let's see which weapons I didn't mention. So I'm quickly gonna go through it. Light great swords we already mentioned. Seems like very good weapon class, especially with the guard counters. Great katanas, there is no footage of great katanas at all. But it's being said that it is essentially a CGS. I wonder if it's going to apply the hyper armor or not. If it's going to have the hyper armor, then it's literally gonna be a minimally faster CGS, which doesn't sound great, but it's probably not going to have the hyper armor. And since, well, those are katanas, they are going to have innate bleed, basically. Yeah? Hand to hand and beast claws basically can be considered as one weapon class. Thrusting shields, it's actually called dual shield, and it is something historically accurate. And apparently it's just like, honestly, not very good. It's regular shield with some additional light attack movesets when you do hand in it. But we're gonna see, it might be fun. Perfume battles, I already told you. Reverse grip swords, already told you. And throwing weapons. You actually have a footage here that I didn't talk much about. Let me find it real quick. So here at the beginning, we can see that dagger that the gamer is wielding is actually a throwing dagger. And look, after perfect block, you have kind of disengaging move, and then you can throw the dagger afterwards, or you are simply going to throw the dagger. The throwing stuff, as you can see, it kind of puts you in the animation for quite some time. It's probably might be the case of weapon class that's going to have somewhat viable crouch attacks and the running attacks, but if you're just going to use it in the regular R1 string, it's gonna be quite a dogshit type of the weapon class. And on top of that, it's probably going to be rather low poise damage type of stuff. So yeah, it's also depending if you are going to have anti-tracking and so on, but really doesn't look that great for now. But we're gonna have to wait, because what's the most important are the numbers, essentially. Yeah, like if the number is going to be good on these, if you're gonna be dealing very good damage, then you're probably gonna be able to find use for it anyway. And yet again, we have that fist weapons moveset. Dude, I really cannot wait to use these. It's looking so fucking good. The next thing is, I have written down curiosities here, so we're gonna go quickly over it. The additional DLC scaling is gone. You can essentially increase your damage in the DLC by finding items similar to the golden seeds, and at the graces you can just use them apparently, and it's going to increase your defenses, in the meaning that damage mitigation and your damage by certain amount of percentages. According to Yowie, it's going to be, I think he has written it down here, 5% damage increase and 3 to 8% of the damage mitigation. It's kind of like Sekiro moment, and honestly I didn't expect anything else here. Fire Knight's Greatsword is actually an interesting thing, because it's apparently going to be a colossal sword with Spyhander's R2, so it's like thrusting poke, and Godslayer R1s. Let me actually find it real quick here. So listen to what Yowie is saying about this weapon.
Greatsword. You guys are going to kick out of this one. This is basically a colossal sword that has a very similar design to the flambeau. It doesn't get bleed. It can be infused. It gets the Godslayer's Greatsword light attack combo and the Zweihander heavy poking attack.
Okay, so whereas it's going to mean that the moveset gonna be very cool, and it's probably gonna be fun weapon, it's also going to be probably pretty dogshit. Why? The neutral R1 on the Godslayer is 18 frames startup versus 17 frames startup on the normal R1s from the Colossal sword attacks, like on the Gags, like on 200 and so on. It actually is let's say lower linger, like it is less lingering. It has like a 3 frames versus 4 frames, which essentially won't allow you to even like a true combo at all. So it's literally just a weaker moveset, and the poke R2 after the spear talisman nerfs and so on it's not good. Most likely it's basically, whereas the fire knight's greatsword sounds like a kind of cool weapon, like from the off-meta perspective, and I'm definitely gonna use it. Just be aware that this weapon, unless it's gonna have very good numbers, going to be dogshit. Another thing is Moon Irritil Greatsword, which essentially apparently is another Colossal, but it's going to have a Great Blade Phalanx. If you don't know what Great Blade Phalanx is, let me actually show you. So this is this spell essentially, yeah? And previously we had like only access to this like in form of the spell, but now it's going to be actually Ash of War on the Colossal sword. So another thing is Bone Bow that has like Ash of War, that is literally a barrage, but with tracking. The Bone Bow is going to be freaking ganker's heaven, because like for you as an invader, if you are invading, it's not gonna be great, but yeah, it's gonna be such an annoying thing to deal with from the invader's perspective when multiple opponents gonna be throwing that shit at you. Anyway, another thing is minor R3, that's basically a warmth from Dark Souls 2, which is technically nice, but invaders probably not gonna use it. Minor R3 is apparently like, it is that thing. If you ever summoned Melina, maybe? I don't remember. Like every fucking female character in this game starts with M. That being said, this thing is actually absolute FPS killer. So we are going to end up with FPS killer that's going to heal you for 7 HP per second, apparently. But this thing requires 70 faith. So yeah, it's probably going to be pretty much useless. Anyway, another thing is that we got Emit Force, and if you don't know what Emit Force is, because, well, in Dark Souls 1 you had that spell that allowed you to create like long range, kind of Wrath of God, yeah, WOG. And yeah, it's basically like Wrath of Gold, but ranged. And here is a thing. There is a chance that it's sadly looking like this. You know, at the beginning here, look, like the gamer is casting something. And then you have that small thingy that flies up on the opponent. And then you can apparently detonate it. And it's going to AoE. If that's that Emit Force that Yowie is talking about in his video, then it's fucking very bad. But if it's going to turn out that it is not that thing, and instead we have something like actual Emit Force from Dark Souls 1, then it might be very usable and very decent utility spell for invaders, and it might be actually very fun to use, especially because in Dark Souls 1 you could just unlock around and throw it on the walls, throw it in the dead angles and so on. It was very, very, very fun to use. But yeah, it is actually, it all depends how exactly that Emit Force in the Elden Ring DLC is going to play out, how it's actually going to work. Like, when it comes to spells, it seems like we have actually seen only like 2 sorceries, 2 spells. One is that zoning thingy, that suck, which is essentially a freaking power creep to other gravity spells in the vanilla Elden Ring. And another spell is essentially like something that I'm kind of curious how it's going to play out in the actual game, because as you can see, it's just like, those are just projectiles that you shoot at opponents, and they fly on them. And what's interesting is that they are not flying smoothly. You see, like there's like a, right now, it's just like, it's gonna stay for a second in the air, it's gonna go a little bit further, gonna stay for a second again, and only afterwards it's going to fly onto the target. And it's looking very weird, and it's probably also gonna be spammable. It has quite a range, and I can imagine there's another Ganker's Heaven tool, because I highly doubt that as an invader you can actually, maybe as an invader you could actually set up potential like pseudo combos with it. I don't know, hard to say. It also depends how it's going to play out against opponents that are closer to you, because like here we have only example of someone casting that against someone that is like further away. Yeah, so yeah, it's hard to say like how viable this spell is going to be and how usable it is going to be. Okay, so aspect of the Crucible wings, that's actually something that I didn't mention earlier. I have showed you that on Oro's video. Yeah, here is the thing, this is that spell. Yeah, actually it's an Ash of War. And as you can see, the NPCs actually have like kind of like different way of using that attack. It's like thrusting. And here, like in case of the player use, you have like kind of a spin bullshit, yeah? So as it turns out, this Ash of War is actually going to have different animation depending on the weapon class you are wielding. And on the sword weapon classes, you are going to end up just doing that thrust type of attack, like you can see here. And on the twin blades, you're gonna have that spin to win bullshittery. Make long story short, none of that is going to be viable. It's gonna be one of the worst freaking spells in the game. But in case if you are going to be an invader and plenty of PvEers gonna use it, then you just gotta have to wait it out, and it's gonna be just a fucking painful. It's another type of Ash that's basically pretty fucking bad, but it's going to stale the game for no particular reason. And that's very sad to see another bullshit Ash of this type, unless I am wrong and it's going to turn out like a great one-shot tool, which is going to be even worse, honestly. But so far, it kind of, at least moveset-wise, looks like fucking shit. As it turns out further, Yoi actually brought plenty of ashes and to the table. He doesn't have the footage because everyone got like just kind of like, you know, like footage from Bamco. And it seems like you're gonna have like a thrusting type of attack for the colossal weapons as an Ash of War that's going to work similarly to the Ice Spear from the vanilla game. So you ending up with thrusting attack that's going to kind of throw the projectile, the fire projectile ahead, and also gonna set your weapon on fire, which gonna add 90 poise damage. Sorry, not poise damage, fire damage to your weapon. Which sounds like a good thing, because colossal swords do not really have much of the very good ashes. And that sounds like something decent. It's also like you can charge it. So that might be very interesting Ash. Furthermore, then another thing that Yoi mentioned in his video, another Ash of War that he mentioned in his video, is actually apparently Black Flame Tornado. That's overall is very good Ash for catching multiple enemies at once. But now you're actually moving with it. So it's kind of like Thundercloud form, but shorter. And yeah, it's going to be, well, it's probably gonna be pretty good tool for invaders, especially if you're gonna use it from behind the wall or something like that. So yeah, I'm curious actually how it's going to play out. Another thing is that they are going to add the Hoarfrost Stomp in the more powerful version called Divine Beast Frost Stomp, which is just going to be kind of bad apparently, because it's gonna be slower, you're gonna have longer wind up in exchange for more damage. So yeah, it's probably not going to be that great. And another thing that we have to talk about are talismans. Initially, you have actually 2 talismans that are going to serve as a good utility to always have. +5 arcane talismans. That one is not really that usable, but another thing is essentially like the tally in the vanilla that heals you 2 HP per second. Well, now we got the FP, which is like essentially mana version, yeah? So it's gonna be actually pretty freaking good, especially in invasions. things where you have to run around, you have like freaking gankers chasing you. So that's actually pretty insane. That one is going to be absolute must-have. Another thing is Relana's cameo, which is like thing that boosts your stance Ashes damage. So, you know, like stuff like Unsheath, for example, or watch it out, fucking Moonveil Ash of War. That being said, it boosts damage by 15%, but apparently it only activates after like certain amount of time, like a 1 second. You have to hold the Ash for the 1 second, which means that it's mostly for PvE, honestly. It's probably not gonna be that good in PvP, because in PvP, you are not waiting like a 1 second in stance. It's just like, it would be very stupid to do so. So another thing is Crusade Insignia that boosts damage by 10% for killing things. So what it essentially means that you can end up pretty much getting yourself a friend. If you're a ganker, you can get yourself a friend that's gonna be killing mobs in the area, and it's going to boost your damage, a person that has it equipped, by 10% for the period of 30 seconds. But that being said, invaders probably can also equip it, and in such case, invader also gonna get like the damage boost. 10% is actually a lot. You can use that with Exalted Flesh, for example. It's gonna give you like 25% more damage. You can use it in the way that, like, for example, if you invade someone, like a squad that is fighting PvE around, or there is a lot of PvE around that gang squads just cannot ignore, you can actually use it to your advantage. So like, you know, the boost of 10% more damage for 30 seconds, depending on the situation. Situationally, it might be absolutely fantastic talisman. Another thing is Enraged Divine Beast that boosts the Storm attacks. So I am so glad, because Storm Assault absolutely needed a buff. Thank you a lot. But jokes aside, Stormhawk Axe probably going to benefit out of it. It's like 10% damage boost, which in case of Stormhawk Axe is guarantees basically one shot. Like right now, Stormhawk Axe against optimal builds, especially hosts that use Morgoth's Great Rune, it wasn't a one-shot, and now it's probably gonna be a one-shot. So Stormhawk Axe is going to benefit out of it tremendously. And the last but not least is actually a deflect mechanic that is kind of fucking crazy. You're gonna have a Physic Flask boost, you're gonna have a Physic Flask tier that is going to allow you to have a deflect effect, which means that if you are going to click your block early before like someone is going to hit you, just before they are going to hit you, you are going to activate deflect damage, which is going to boost the counter, the guard counter damage, which is going to work very well, most likely with the light greatswords, because as I said, that this seems like pretty good weapons that going to be maybe even usable in PvP with the guard counters. It's essentially going to boost the guard counter damage, and on top of that, it's going to make it so that you are losing practically no stamina on blocking, basically. Maybe with the correct timing, this deflect tier is going to be absolutely insane with the shield poking. So you use the block, you shield poke immediately, and then because of that deflect tier, you are going to end up practically not using stamina at all in the process. It might be very strong, but bear in mind that first of all, it's a time gated because it is physic buff. So you essentially have to expect it to last maybe for like 3 minutes, and that's it. And yeah, it also takes the slot from the physic. Well, DLC looking interesting. I think looking like how broken some descriptions of certain things look like, I might end up just being a challenge runner from now on. Fuck PvP.gg.